Here.
Lonnie Wong-Bissett. Here. Peter Pham, not present. Mara Burton, not present. Ed Von Runnen.
Here.
We have a quorum, Chair.
We have a quorum. Thank you all so much. Okay, at this time, any members of the public will have an opportunity to address the committee on any item not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. I see none in the room. Caroline, do we have any virtually?
There are none.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next item is the approval of minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay. Thank you so much. I will now take a vote. Again, please, oh wait, can we do show of hands yet? Or,
No.
okay, so we're gonna do a roll call vote, which means turn your mics on green. You hear and respond to your name, then turn your mic off, right?
Would you mind please repeating who motioned and who seconded?
I made it first.
Robert made the first.
Robert, and then Dan.
Thank
Okay. Aaron Gill,
I abstained since I wasn't here.
Robert Zippel,
Aye.
Lauren Lewis,
Aye.
Justin Fields,
Aye.
Dan Kenny,
Aye.
Kathy Sutherland. Aye. Steve Mink,
Aye.
Lonnie Wong-Bissett,
I'll have to abstain as well since I wasn't present.
and Ed Von Runnen.
Aye. Okay, so we have some old business to attend to before new business. So I will take this opportunity to do the opening report. I just want to use that time to do 2 things. First of all, acknowledge the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority and their everyday field teams. For those of you that frequent the preserves, you'll notice that they held up remarkably well in the storm. And they, for the most part, were open, with the exception of a few of the real heavy hitting high risk days. I want to stress that the reason that the parks and the preserve stayed in such great shape is the work that happens all year round. Those of you that know about taking care, not just about trails, but taking care of land, know that if you start moving dirt around the week before the storm, you're exposed. But if you're doing it throughout the year, you have some chance to move the water around as it favors you and the planet. So bravo to them. Another thing, generally about how the meetings work, I would love to see this committee adopt the following practice, which is if you wish to be recognized during a speaker or presentation and you wish to be recognized by the chair, a great way to do that would be to leave your mic off in common practice, but just subtly kind of turn it on. I'll give you a nod that I see your mic is on and that you are in the queue to speak, and then you can turn your mic back off. This has worked well in the past. So again, you're supposed to be recognized by the chair before speaking. It can, if there's hand raising, there's ways to do it. I think that's a good way. So again, just briefly turn your mic on, get a nod from the chair, turn your mic back off, and you'll be on a list to speak. With that, we will move to the old business item. The first of which is an information only item. It's a recap of the Open Space Authority summary of 2022 programs and projects by Mark Landgraf.
No, that's the next item. That's right. Good evening, committee members. I think you know why I'm here for old business. It's not just because of the graying hair. It's actually, I was trying to give a couple of presentations last time virtually, and the connection wasn't very good. I apologize for that. But I wanted to make sure that the information was complete in the record for your notes, for your knowledge, of course. So this first item is one that is just a recap of everything that the Open Space Authority accomplished in 2022. So if you had a chance to take a look at your packet, all of the information from my notes was transcribed into those into that report, and then along with the presentation. And actually I added a few additional notes. So thank goodness Lee and Charlotte were here during that meeting in November, taking notes on some of the great questions that were asked. And so we included some of those questions and answers to them in the notes. So I didn't want to go back through the whole presentation and take up your time, but I'm here certainly to answer any questions if you have any, and otherwise we'll move on.
I see none. Any questions or comments from Mark? Okay, I should have done this first, but public comment. I believe even though this is old business, we would allow members of the public, I believe it's 3 minutes to comment. I don't believe we have any in the room or virtually. So Mark will be kind enough to stick around for another information item, the legislative and redistricting update. In the right order this time, we will allow members of the public 3 minutes to comment if they have any. I see none, and I see none. Okay, Mark.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, good evening again. So this item as well was deferred from the last meeting because of the technical issues I had on my end. So this is a presentation about our legislative and policy priorities that was given to our board of directors last fall. Still completely relevant. In fact, I have more updates for you now that we're in January of 2023. So I will give the presentation again. There's a lot of information in the memo that I'm not going to go through in detail here. Hopefully you had a chance to read through that. Please feel free to ask any questions as I'm going through, or you can wait till the end, and I'll do my best to answer those. So just some of the highlights from 2022. There was a lot of work in the at the federal and state and local levels that benefited our work and ultimately, of course, our constituents. So at the federal level, the Inflation Reduction Act and other federal legislation that provided funding, there's pretty significant funding there. And as I believe you know, since we recently hired federal consultants that work in Washington, D.C. to help us with both building relationships and with grant programs, we're going to do our best to, and with their help, access a lot of that funding for our programs. I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment here on the federal side of what's coming up this coming year. Also, the state had a large budget surplus in 2022, and we were able to see funding allocated to some of the key agencies that we work with, especially the Wildlife Conservation Board, Coastal Conservancy, and others. I'll give an update on 2023 here in a moment with the governor's budget message that you may have heard of just earlier this month. There's already some pullback on that, but still the vast majority of the funding that was allocated during that surplus is still there. Also, at the local level, we've been working with our partners at the city and county on some of the work they're doing on housing and conservation. Again, more on that later, but there's quite a bit of work going on there locally as well. So then looking ahead to 2023, our program objectives, again, as you probably read in the memo, are basically about securing funding and supporting new streamlines, new streams of funding where we can, especially as we participate in a lot of coalitions that have a common voice in Sacramento, especially, but also in DC for some of that funding. We also track legislation that's relevant to us, and then often take support or oppose positions where we need to, again, working with partners in our coalitions. And then there's certain legislation that we engage with more closely. Some of that legislation might have to do with work that's relevant to Coyote Valley specifically, or something else here in our district. Right now, there's nothing of that nature, but there's definitely a possibility. And then the levels of engagement and as well the list of coalitions that we belong to, that's also in the memo. So please let me know if you have any questions on that. Otherwise, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the specific priorities. So first, check in with the calendar. So you can see the vertical yellow line there shows where we are right now. Here towards the end of January already. Year just started, but we are well into the state legislative session for this calendar year, as well as in the federal session, and had elections back in November, looking already to the next round of elections in 2024. So at the federal level, you know, our priorities, as you would probably guess, are first and foremost about relationship building. That's so important when you want help with something. You can't just go to an elected official or their staff when you need something and expect to be listened to. So we build relationships first. We have very good relationships, for instance, with Congresswoman Lofgren. She came to one of our events where we celebrated the acquisition of Coyote Ridge back in 2015. She was our keynote speaker. So we're going to continue those relationships and build more relationships, especially with the help of our federal contractors now. And then we're also going to build relationships with staff at federal agencies like the Department of Interior and the Environmental Protection Agency that have grant programs that are relevant to our work too. Some of the grant programs like the Land and Water Conservation Fund that have now been made permanent, we're hoping to apply some of that funding to acquisitions or other projects that we have, especially in Coyote Valley, but throughout our landscape. And then the community project funding process is also called earmarks, although the legislators don't like to call it that. That has a negative connotation, but we do work with our legislators on a community project funding ask. We did last year, and we'll do that again this year. And even with the change in House leadership, who are the ones that get to start that community funding project process, they have decided that they're going to continue that. So we are putting together a strategy probably to work either with Congresswoman Lofgren or Congressman Panetta on one of those asks. The 2023 Farm Bill is in the works. There's been some discussion already about what that will contain, and it's very important to us as we support agriculture. There's some, certainly we want to be supportive and work with, especially Congressman Panetta, who's on the Agricultural Committee in the House, on the things that are important to us. But there's some programs that we'd like to see improved over time too. For instance, as we do more buy, protect, sell of agricultural lands, what that means is buy agricultural property from somebody who just wants to sell it on the market. We put a conservation easement on it to protect it so that it remains in agriculture, and then resell it to a private farmer who wants to work the land, but maybe can't afford it at the full real estate, market price, but can afford it if there's a conservation easement on it. So that's called buy, protect, sell. And that's something that currently we as a public agency, as a special district, aren't able to engage in with federal funding. And so we'd like to change that statute so that we are able to participate. That's an important one. And then we also work to support tribal recognition and programs that provide funding for capacity building with our tribal partners.
We have a question on this slide from Aaron.
Thanks, Mark. And going back to your last slide on this calendar year and talking about legislative stuff, is there any bills or anything that's coming on that you're targeting and watching to promote? Either from Rockland or Jamaica Panetta?
Yeah, thanks, through the chair. So we are tracking those through our federal consultants, and so far nothing's come across our radar. But if you have information on anything specific, would love to hear it.
Yeah, I don't have any
Okay.
at this point, but I know that it gets pretty busy up there. So I was
Yes.
thinking that, you know, since you were very involved legislatively at a state level and now federally was too, if you have anything that you're marking as far as following, that's going to be supportive for Coyote Valley. That's my main question.
Yeah.
Do you see anything on the horizon that's coming up that will be worthy of looking into in terms of as a board member?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the question. We'll keep monitoring that. And we've had several meetings with our federal consultants because they're relatively new for us. We started with them in the fall, but we've had several meetings to discuss our priorities. They're by now really familiar with what we're looking for, especially in the agricultural area. Yeah, so we'll definitely keep track of things that are relevant to our agency.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thank you. So at the state level, again, we're building relationships with our elected leaders and their staff, and staff of the funding agencies is really important. You can see a list of some of the major focus areas for funding. One update I can give is that because the state is expecting a budget deficit this year, even though we will still be making a budget allocation ask for funding for Coyote Valley through the Coyote Valley Conservation Program. That's the one that was created by Assemblymember Calra back in 2019. AB 948 created that program specifically for Coyote Valley. But in addition, when there are years of deficit at the state, you know, budget allocations are much harder to come by. There's just not a lot of money lying around, of course. And what then starts to gain some momentum is work, especially by legislators, to develop bond measures or other funding measures that would go to the ballot at some point in the future. So there is already work underway by Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia and other legislators to develop a climate resilience bond, which would provide money to the agencies we work with, Coastal Conservancy, Wildlife Conservation Board, and others, to build climate resilience. And then that bond measure, if it passes the legislature, would presumably go to the ballot in 2024. So we would very much like to see the Coyote Valley Conservation Program in particular built into that bond measure so that that's on the ballot when people go to vote, among, you know, so many other programs around the state, of course, but that would help allocate a chunk of funding to our program here. I can also let you know that, and you may have heard this news from the governor, but with an expected $22 to $25 billion deficit this year, he's already proposed cuts to some of the climate programs that he allocated funding to last year during the time of surplus. So of the $54 billion for climate that was allocated, a proposal for cutting $6 billion of that is already underway. Of course, that all has to be worked out through the legislature, but a lot of that $6 billion is in areas that we don't work in, you know, energy, transportation, et cetera. But for the nature-based solutions types of programs that we tend to access, about 14% of that budget has been cut. Again, just proposed at this point, but we are working already with our partners to get letters and calls into our legislators to push back on that if we can. You also see some of the policies and programs that we're working on. Those are similar to programs we worked on last year. A greater emphasis this year is on the integration of conservation and climate and housing. So as you may remember from discussions last year, a lot of state legislation that seeks to accelerate building of housing, which we all need, right? We want to address the housing crisis very much. At the same time, we don't think that construction on, our most precious natural resources is the way to go. We think we can build housing, especially in the urban areas where there's transit, where there are more services available anyway, and then protect our natural resources for climate resilience and for public recreation. So there's quite a bit of work going on in that intersection between conservation and housing to make more people at the state aware of how we can meet multiple state goals at the same time without having those goals compete with each other. And Lena Ian, our community impact and policy specialist, got it right, good, is working on a white paper that she is doing in partnership with the Nature Conservancy that addresses that specific topic, especially as it relates to RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation that happens every 8 years, and that the city of San Jose, County of Santa Clara, and other cities in our county are currently wrestling with. We're particularly interested in that for our county. The County of Santa Clara, in its original proposal a few months ago, was proposing to put housing outside of Gilroy and Morgan Hill, where, and of course we need housing in those cities, but outside of the city limits, it then converts land use from agriculture to those other purposes. And we would like to see preservation of the agriculture even around those cities. And so we're trying to work with the county, with the city of San Jose, currently on a hoped for transfer of the county's units into the city of San Jose. That's currently under negotiation, and we're supporting those efforts. But in the meantime, Lena's white paper is describing that whole process that we've gone through and what the what the benefits are for the public of integrating those two goals, the housing goals and the conservation goals, and thinking about them at the same time, not one at a time and one after the other. Anyway, that's kind of a lot. Before I ramble on further, maybe I'll stop here and see if anybody has any questions.
I haven't seen any.
Okay. All right, I'll ramble further. So at the local and regional level, especially regarding land use, I was just talking about this intersection of conservation and housing, and in particular that white paper that Lena's working on. But we are working in multiple areas to help communicate, I would say, with our local partners, and then bring that information to the state level so that we're breaking down some of the silos that people just naturally work in, especially in larger agencies like at the city of San Jose and the Natural Resources Agency at the state and the Housing and Community Development Department at the state, so that they see a little bit more of what can be done when we work on these goals together. So that's what a lot of these items are about. But in particular, I wanted to also mention we are working with the MTC ABAG group, so the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and Association of Bay Area Governments, on their Priority Conservation Area program, which we benefited from. We've gotten a number of grants from that program to do land acquisition. And they are revamping that process, and we're trying to work in some of these learnings from that conservation and housing intersection, as well as preventing sprawl to protect our natural resources, what kind of natural infrastructure we're protecting in Coyote Valley. We're trying to work in a lot of those learnings to inform their program, their grant program around the Bay Area. So on a steering committee for that.
We have a question from Lonnie.
Thank you for all of the information, but I hope it's okay, but I do have questions about the conservation and housing as to how those two go together. I'm very fascinated. I'm fascinated by the housing conversation. Obviously, I live in Morgan Hill. And yeah, that is very concerning, obviously, I'm trying to put things, but I'm curious, what is the conversation? How is I guess I haven't actually seen or heard what the solution is if you don't build housing there, because I see both sides, especially living there. They want to move people there because there's nowhere else to buy, and so they want to build houses. But at the same time, what is the solution? I'm curious what the conversation is, if you can touch on it a little bit.
Yeah, sure, through the chair. So really good question. And there's quite a bit there to unpack. So I'm happy to meet with you offline too, to go into it a little bit more detail than I can do here. But and Lena, please, if you have other ways of describing this that are more clear, please help me out. But just at a basic level, so in 2019, I believe it was, our board passed a resolution that talks about this intersection of housing and climate. And we can point you to that resolution, but basically it talks about the support that we as an agency have for addressing the housing crisis on an ongoing basis. We definitely want to see housing built. We think that if we look at where the best areas are to build housing, not we personally, right? But if we're helping others to look at where natural resources are that we want to see protected, then housing can be guided to areas where it doesn't have that same impact on natural resources. And so, for instance, our local LAFCO, I don't know if you're familiar with that agency. It's the Local Area Formation Commission. There's one for each county in the state, and it's created by the state to oversee annexation of lands by cities and other land use decisions. And their guidance is that currently Morgan Hill, in particular, since you asked about Morgan Hill, has enough available land within the city limits to build housing. So, I mean, there might be debate about that, but given that guidance, that would definitely be a preference to use available land within the city limits before you start annexing more farmland. Because once the farmland's gone, it's gone, right? So we want to see protection of those lands where possible for natural infrastructure, food, all sorts of public benefits that come from those. And so it's just looking at, where can the housing go and where do we want to protect natural resources at the same time? That's what currently isn't done too well. They're done separately in silos, and we want to get those people talking to each other more. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Lena.
Through the chair. Yeah, so I think that was a great summary, and I think it's been really valuable for us to have more conversations with folks that are coming from the housing kind of first, or through the housing lens really, and that being their focus, and just realizing that kind of the different languages that we're using for a lot of the same things when it comes to land use, and especially with environmental factors being seen, certain things can be seen as environmental hazards or risks. And I think one of the big things that we're trying to articulate more and more is the environmental value, and that it can be both a hazard in the context of housing, but also we don't want to develop in certain areas because of the flood protection benefits, all those things that everyone here knows. So I think just really broadening that conversation has been really valuable.
We have another one here, and Aaron, I see you next.
Hi, Mark. Can you reverse that one slide? I should have asked a question earlier. The Taxpayer Protection Citizens Initiative, what is that?
Okay, through the chair, thank you for that question. This is a citizens initiative, so it's done through groups collecting signatures around the state to put a measure on the ballot in 2024 that would make it more difficult for special districts to pass funding measures, especially ones that are associated with raising taxes. It's a little bit confusing, but right now the situation is we could, like a citizens group could place a measure on the ballot for our benefit, and the threshold for passing that measure would be 50%, even though if we place a measure on the ballot as a special district, our threshold is 2/3, so 67%, to pass that measure. That would go away with this citizens initiative. Not saying that anybody's currently planning on doing that, but it makes it more difficult. Also, there are a number of agencies that work off of raising, special districts that work off of raising fees for their work. We don't have as much of the fee-based work, but this initiative would put a lot more restriction on what could be charged for fees, and the actual cost of what the fee would go to has to be proven before the fee can be charged. So it just makes a lot of very specific provisions that make it a lot more difficult for special districts, as well as other entities, to operate. So, yeah.
I can see why that would be a concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's something that our board has passed a resolution in opposition to, and CSDA, the California Special Districts Association, has been gathering other groups around the state in opposition to that to push back on this.
Anytime I see those words, I kind of go, oh,
Taxpayer protection.
thank you.
Aaron, and then we'll let Mark move on.
Thanks, Lauren. I guess, and Lynn too, in terms of LAFCO and its formation, was it the charter for LAFCO to be able to protect agriculture in terms of the encroachment of urban areas? Was that the founding of LAFCO? Do you recall that by chance? That comes to my mind as a question, and that's how I view it. And I think that's being looked at in terms of an evolutionary process, and now might be used in terms of trying to protect open space. And I'm wondering if the foundation was in your mind, Mark, was that primarily for agricultural protections?
So through the chair, yeah, my understanding, and Lena, I don't know if you have more information on this, but is that the primary purpose of the LAFCO is to just have state oversight over the city's ability to annex property. That's the primary. Yeah, and whether it's for agricultural preservation purposes, I don't believe so, but I'm really not certain. But I could look that up and get back to you.
Okay. In a second for two, and in terms of trying to go ahead and identify the housing, Rena, and all those things, is there anybody doing any identification as to what it takes to go ahead and have a sustainable population size in terms of infrastructure for services such as water and other applications? I think that's super important in the conversation to say how we address housing is we need to go ahead and address what people need and what those needs can be brought to bear for, whether that's in the cost of housing itself or in the cost of energy, the cost of water, and cost of transportation services. Is there anybody doing any work that can be almost like a balance sheet type of an application to say this is feasible at this level, but we're pretty much with the infrastructure we have and the availability of natural resources, we're getting max in terms of what we're able to provide for a 40 million, population for California. So, and that's a big question, but do you guys know if anybody is doing anything in terms of a tabulation and economic analysis?
Through the chair. So when the numbers are developed for the regional, for RENA, it starts off, the process starts off with the state housing department working with the finance department and doing an analysis of demographics, and there are different factors that are factored in, but what you're speaking to in terms of sort of defining any sort of limits, I think that we're at a point where a lot of the process is trying to give the ability for regions and then local jurisdictions to sort of adapt and make the necessary adjustments and developments possible. But it's I think a lot of the from the science and planning perspective, there's a lot that shows that if we densify, if we are producing more infill development, that we can really catch up and adapt or can have enough housing for people, but that we cannot keep going at this pace with sprawl development. And so I think that's really what one of our kind of takeaways or themes really is it's hard to pushing for the infill development and a sustainable use of resources, but right now that's kind of not really able to be defined within the processes.
Yeah, so I think as Lena's saying, in a increasingly resource constrained world that we're in, and then with natural disasters coming on top of that, urban infill where housing is provided in a more dense pattern than single family residences in a suburb, for instance. It's a much more water friendly, energy friendly way to provide housing. But in terms of your question about whether we know about specific areas that have limited development because of those constraints, I think people are coming to that realization, but I don't know that limitations like that have been expressed.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to share more information offline too on kind of what we learned from the process itself and the different site inventory analyses, for example, that are conducted at a local level. And in certain jurisdictions, like in Southern California, they're integrating or considering water resource availability in a different way than they are in the Bay Area, for example. And so it's kind of, there are different approaches to how that's being looked at and assessed, but because we're in a situation, especially in the Bay Area where housing is such a shortage, it's there's definitely a push to kind of not push aside to other problems, but really push things forward and kind of figure it out as it goes along.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I think everybody here looks at the homelessness issue here and has sympathy for people that are not in a home and they're almost ostracized from society in a very negative way. That it's negative implication for the environment as well. So I think that one thing that kind of comes in, I don't want to take me more time in this committee, but it's something I have interest in. I'm trying to go ahead and identify because it's something I brought up to Supervisor Wassman about 7 years ago, saying, when is the point that you put a no vacancy sign up? Because you don't have the ability to go ahead and provide services to all of the constituents and all the people that actually live in California and want to.
Mhm.
And I see it from a resource standpoint in terms of limited waters available, as even as far as the ability to use reclaimed waters and recycled waters from advanced water treatment plants, that they're not being made available because the cost prohibitive structures of doing it. So I'm really interested in that conversation. If you want to include me, thank you.
Yeah, definitely will. Thank you. All right, then I think I covered this slide. There's more local work going on. By saying we, I often mean Lena is involved in a lot of the local coalitions here in our county and in the city of San Jose, including with a new City of San Jose Climate Commission that's been formed, and we're going to participate in that formation. But these are just some of the general areas that we work in locally. So one thing that I brought into this presentation that wasn't there in November is since the redistricting process took place earlier last year, we have new board districts, as you know, and of course, all the other legislative districts throughout our jurisdiction, we're doing the same thing, right? City of San Jose, county, state, and federal districts all got their boundaries changed. And so Anna McGarrigle, our GIS specialist, is she just okay? I'm just not good with titles. Sorry about that. She did this great job creating a map for our internal use where we can see where those boundaries are. And then as you can see, the purple line, it's a little bit hard to tell here, a lot of lines going on, but we can take a look one at a time at all of the other jurisdictions. Like in this example, California Assembly districts are shown overlain with our board districts, and then find out where the overlaps are. And so then it gives our board members, and of course, for your information here on the CAC as well, the information, which elected leaders are most relevant to any given board district. And so the result is the table that it's going to be a little hard to see here in the slide, but it's in your package. And so in the PDF, in the package, you should be able to blow it up so that you can see all the individual names. But it shows by jurisdiction from City of San Jose to County, California State Assembly and Senate districts, Water District, Valley Water, and then the congressional districts, who the elected representatives are that overlap with each of our 7 board districts. So I think it's really good information for everybody to have. The map also, let me go back for just a sec. The map also shows with the symbology that's shown in the legend on the right, where urban grant program awards have been made and how those overlap with the board districts as well. So lots of information here that's going to be useful to hopefully you as well as our board members in moving forward. All right, so that is the presentation and loved the questions. Happy to entertain any additional questions.
Thank you so much, Mark. I see none.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Lena.
Okay, and with that, we transition back to new committee business. Members of the public will have the opportunity to comment on any matter on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. The first order of business is the election of the 2023 chair and vice chair.
So I'm happy to run the process by you. The chair will open the floor to nominations. We can start with chair, and we can take up to 3 nominations. Any member may nominate any other member, including themselves. We don't need a second to vote. Just a simple nomination is fine. And then we can take up to 3 nominations on the floor at once. Once we get the 3 nominations, we can close the nominations, and then the committee will vote, starting with the last nomination received and then moving up. Whomever is elected chairperson by the full board will then be chair. And then we can repeat the process with vice chair.
Okay, and when elected by the board, in this case, you mean committee?
A committee, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will open the floor for nominations. Go ahead.
Thank you. Lauren, would you be interested in the chair?
I wouldn't decline, and I would not decline a nomination. That's a double negative. But I mean it as such.
I would like to nominate you.
Thank you. Any other nominations? I will nominate, if he would be so kind as to accept Justin. I do appreciate very much his relationship with the property we oversee, so.
Well, I was actually gonna nominate you because you only got to do this on your second meeting in person, so you kind of need to do it. Everything else was via Zoom, so. I will decline because I think you should stay on if you don't mind.
Fair enough. That was my contribution. Any other, seeing no other nominations. Because we didn't reach 3. So, do they have until November? Do they have until November? Do we then just vote now?
Yeah, you can close the nominations.
So we will do so. We will close the nominations, and we cannot do show of hands. We need to do roll call.
Correct.
Okay, so please for the roll call vote, if you would be so kind as to turn your mics on. And then when you hear and respond to your name, please turn your mics on.
Okay, Aaron Gill,
I approve.
Robert Sipple,
I approve.
Lauren Lewis,
I approve.
Justin Fields,
I approve.
Dan Kenny,
I,
Kathy Sutherland,
Yes.
Steve Mink.
Aye.
Lonnie Wong Bissett,
Approved.
Edward Von Running.
Aye.
Unanimous.
congratulations.
Thank you all so much. It is, I appreciate it. Thank you. Don't make me use the gavel. Okay, so I will now open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Robert.
I'd like to nominate Justin.
All right. Okay, all right. I think we got him. Any other nominations?
I would not be offended to not be nominated.
All right, I will,
You've done a wonderful job sitting behind you.
I will nominate, Steve. Any other nominations? Kathy?
Can I just ask for a clarification? Steve, what did you say? You would not be offended to be not nominated?
I have enjoyed my time as the vice chair. But I think it's great to move the role around.
Okay,
So if elected, I will serve,
okay.
and if not elected, I won't take my ball and go home. I will continue to serve as a member of the CAC. Just not as vice chair.
Okay.
I am familiar with similar sentiments, Steve, so I knew what you meant. That's my comfort with the double negative myself. So I guess at this time it is prudent to close nominations. Now, would you be so kind as to tell us how a head-to-head thing works? Is it you ask us all and whoever gets the most wins, or?
Can we clarify? So is there two motions for vice chair?
Mhm.
Okay, let me. And then, so who made the motion to nominate Steve?
I did. And Robert nominated Justin.
Okay, so we are gonna vote starting with the last motion made, so Lauren Lewis, or the nomination for Steve Mink.
So my question would be, can I vote for both? Like, how does it work if we vote on one at a time? Thank you so much, Kelly.
If the first motion is not passed by majority, then you go to the second. But if the first motion, a majority votes to to elect Steve, that's the one we're gonna vote on first, then you stop the voting, and he
Okay,
becomes vice chair.
so the way to vote for Justin when we're all voting for Steve is to not vote.
Or nay.
You say that.
Okay, cool. Okay, got that, everybody? All right. Oh, Aaron,
For someone who's just new to this process, can you go ahead and give me a historical context of how generally chairs and vice chairs have rotated through, or how does it generally, what have you guys done historically?
It's based on the calendar year, so a chair can be chaired, or a chair and vice chair will be chair for that calendar year. But there is no term limit per se, so they can be reappointed the following year consecutively. And basically, the chair presides over the meeting, keeps the rule of order in the room, and then the vice chair will act in the chair's absence. So then he will, or whomever is chair will then assume that role and facilitate the meeting. There is some agenda building that happens outside of the committee. So staff will reach out to the chair or the vice chair on thoughts about agenda items. So
Thank you.
that's the commitment level. And
Okay, I've done it, yeah, I think we're ready for the vote, thank you
Okay.
so much.
all right, so the motion on the floor is Lauren Lewis made a motion to nominate Steve Mink for vice chairperson of the Citizens Advisory Committee for 2023. So I will be opening the vote. Aaron Gill,
I,
Robert Sipple,
and for no hard feelings, I feel just the way Steve does. You have to get your feet wet. You did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Lauren Lewis,
Aye.
Justin Fields.
Aye.
Dan Kenny,
No.
Kathy Sutherland,
Oh my God. I'm gonna say nay.
Steve Mink,
Nay.
Lonnie Wong Bissett,
Nay.
Edward Von Rennen.
I'm glad I'm the last one, nay.
And the motion does not pass. Three yeas and 6 nays. So now the motion on the floor is Robert Sipple nominated Justin Fields for vice chairperson of the CAC for 2023. And I will open the vote. Aaron Gill.
Aye.
Robert Sipple. Lauren Lewis. Justin Fields.
Aye.
Dan Kenny.
Aye.
Kathy Sutherland.
I,
Steve Mink.
Aye.
Lonnie Wong Bissett. Aye. Edward Von Rennen.
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Gotta have a cowboy sometime.
I do want to quickly acknowledge Steve, who's been affiliated with this committee much longer than I have and was really meant a lot in kind of showing me the way, and although I'm familiar with chairing committees like this, not this committee. So serving with him has been extremely helpful. And Steve, thank you for that. Don't lose my phone number. And Justin, I look forward to working with you. And with that, we will move on to committee item number 2. This is an information only item on the Coyote Valley Conservation Area Master Plan Engagement Update from Nick Perry. Members of the public will have the opportunity to speak on this agendized item. They will be limited to 3 minutes. I see none among us. Caroline Kelly, do we have any in the crowd? Okay, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, committee members. Nick Perry, Coyote Valley Project Manager with the Open Space Authority, joined here by Lena Ian, who you all know. We'll be co-presenting this presentation tonight. I want to start by saying this is my first time presenting in person to a group in this room because I started in late 2020. So really nice to be here and out of the box on Zoom. So let's go ahead and get started. And I think we'll try to get through the presentation and we have time at the end for questions, but if anything's not clear, just let me know if someone turns their mic on. So tonight's presentation, we want to give you an overview of our engagement goals and approach to the Coyote Valley Conservation Areas Master Plan, CV Camp for short. And then we're going to talk about the engagement timeline and what we hope to accomplish over the next few years in terms of public engagement. And then at the end, we want to talk a little bit about the CAC's role and potential opportunities for you to get involved in the CV Camp process. So I'll start by giving an overview of the engagement goals and approach. I like to start with this image. Some of you may have seen this slide before, but it's this beautiful bird's eye view of Coyote Valley looking west towards the Santa Cruz Mountains. It was taken by our own Derek Newman. Just really sets us in the setting that we're working in here and all the wonderful potential that exists in the Coyote Valley in terms of being a landscape linkage for wildlife to connect between the mountain ranges, the valley floor itself with its amazing habitat potential in terms of the historic Laguna Seca on the northern side of the valley, Fisher Creek flowing through it. Just to orient you to this image, if you're still trying to figure out their bearings, we're looking west, San Jose is on the right, Morgan Hills on the left, Monterey Bay and the Pacific Ocean off in the distance. And then the prime farmlands of Coyote Valley and how important they are towards keeping the legacy of the Valley of Hearts Delight alive and modernizing it for the future. And finally, just all the great potential we have here to improve public health through access to the lands that we've protected. So speaking of the protected lands, as you all know, in 2019, we had the protection of the North Coyote Valley Conservation Area, about 1,000 acres. Since then, we've preserved another 500 acres in Mid-Coyote Valley. So we now have 1,550 acres plus land protected in the Coyote Valley between the Open Space Authority, Post, and the city of San Jose. And these lands are the focus of the Coyote Valley Conservation Area's master plan, where our goal is to really create a multi-benefit landscape that strikes the right balance between the wide range of goals that we have for Coyote Valley. So those goals, just to read through them very quickly, we defined 10 of them. We want to enhance wildlife habitat and ecological connectivity, sustainably manage water resources, improve public health via access to nature, foster ongoing and inclusive community engagement, respect, honor, and preserve and interpret cultural heritage and historic resources, adapt to changing climate conditions, support local agriculture, leverage unique landscape features to boost the local economy, promote equitable and sustainable transportation to and from and through Coyote Valley, and consider the big picture, the holistic vision. Don't just look at the protected properties themselves, but how they fit within the larger context. So tonight's presentation, we really want to hone in on one of those goals, the fostering ongoing and inclusive community engagement. We've defined about 5 sub-goals to that goal, which I want to just take a moment to describe. We want to raise public awareness about Coyote Valley and its value and potential with the community. We want to work with the community to create a shared vision for the future of the protected lands in Coyote Valley. We want to grow a community of supporters who are engaged in not just the master planning process itself, but in Coyote Valley for the long range, for stewardship and being involved in that landscape for forever. We want to prioritize communities that are historically underrepresented in traditional planning processes through initiatives and programs that promote justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. And we want to learn from the experiences of doing community engagement in the master planning process to connect those to the larger mission of the authority and connect people to the Open Space Authority through the master planning process's public engagement. So our engagement team consists of the Open Space Authority is leading this effort. And it touches on many different departments and divisions, not just the planning department, but also public affairs and field operations working together to engage the public on the master planning process. And we have our core partners, the other 2 land owning entities in the Coyote Valley project area, Post, Peninsula Open Space Trust, and the city of San Jose. Our consulting team, which we hired last year, includes a wealth of experts and sub-consultants, everything from hydrology, hydraulics, habitat, transportation. But we do have 2 engagement consultants that are part of the team, Civic Edge and Scansion. And together, we're all working together to create and implement a community engagement plan that will last the duration of the project. So one of the first things that we worked on as a team was spending a lot of time defining who the audiences might be for community engagement. So staff identified over 500 potential stakeholder organizations and groups, sorting them into broad categories based on anticipated level of interest in the project. And very broadly speaking, we've defined those into kind of 3 major buckets. We have internal stakeholders who are the project site landowners who are involved in the master planning's approval, funding, or regulation. So that includes the Open Space Authority, Post, and the city of San Jose. So for example, staff is an internal stakeholder. You all are internal stakeholders as being a member of the CAC. External stakeholders we've defined as entities that have jurisdiction or oversight over the project site and might be involved in approval, funding, or regulation. So some examples there, partner agencies like the Habitat Agency, Valley Water, tribal governments that review the plan through environmental review processes, regulators, funders, elected officials. And then finally, last and definitely not least, is community audiences. And these are groups that we want to invite and welcome into the planning process who maybe don't have official jurisdiction over it, but are really the benefit and the stakeholders that we want to engage. So that includes local communities, neighbors, neighborhood associations, environmental advocacy groups, agricultural groups, youth and educational institutions, the list goes on. And we want to capture and not capture, we want to be connecting to all those people. So that last group is really the focus of the rest of the presentation, is how we're going to reach these community audiences in the planning process. So after spending some time thinking about our engagement audiences, we want to define the level of engagement the general public might have in the planning process. And the purpose of doing this is to be clear and transparent and honest when it comes to our promises to the public and how their input will shape our plans. That way we can be respectful of their time and capacity and set clear expectations from the start of the project. So to do this, we use the International Association for Public Participation, IAP2. It's kind of a mouthful. They're engaged at Spectrum. A few of us have been trained by this group in public participation. And the spectrum defines a range of engagement levels from the most basic form of engagement on the left, which is inform, where basically the role is we're going to inform the public on the engagement, to the most intensive, which is empower, where we would implement what the public decides. And there's no one level of engagement inherently better than the other. What's key is matching the right level of engagement to the context of the project. So for the CV camp, for our master planning process, we think broadly speaking, the level of engagement will fall in the consult and involve categories, where our basic promise to the public is we want to listen to and learn from and gather your ideas and help them use those ideas to influence the decisions we make in the master planning process. And again, this is with the general public in mind. There could very well be somebody that we meet who's an expert in habitat restoration, and we would of course take their input into account and make sure that's reflected in the plans that we're working on. So the next step that we did was defining the decision-making spaces for the public. We defined 16 broad decision-making spaces where we see engagement as especially critical to the master planning process. And to highlight just a few examples, these are just a few that we want to share. So for habitat restoration approaches, the level of engagement will fall mostly under the inform category. We will make sure the public is made aware of habitat restoration opportunities and constraints, kept informed of plans for restoration management, and made aware of future opportunities to engage as maybe stewards or volunteers. For trail routing, we saw that more falling under the consult category, where if we have more than one viable option for a trail going through the public spaces, we would ask the public for their input about what options might better be advanced. And then for interpretive features, as an example, we would think the level of engagement falls more in the involved category, where we want to work with the public to define which features and topics they think we should be prioritizing for interpretation or educational programs. Again, this is very generalized. These decision-making spaces are defined with the average member of the public in mind, and we may hear from a member of the public that is, say, an expert in habitat restoration. And again, we would, take the time to listen to them and learn from their expertise. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk more about the timeline for engagement, and I'll turn that over to Lena to do so. But before that, I just want to talk about some of the ongoing engagement that we're doing. So we are responding to requests from citizen groups to give informational presentations on CV Camp. We are updating the public via our communication tools. We have a list, email list, over 600 subscribers that we'll be using. We have a website that's translated into Spanish and Vietnamese. We work with our comms team to get CV Camp information out through our newsletter and social media. We work with our publication, education, and interpretive team to get CV Camp content out to all the events and stewardship activities that we do. We're also working on some innovative partnerships that we hope to do over the years. So right now, one of them is working with the Cal Academy of Science to potentially do like co-sponsored bio blitzes. We're out with the public. And we are planning an Earth Day event on April 22nd, where we're going to invite the public out to Caddy Valley, have activities, information about the CV Camp, one of our first big public in-person CV Camp events. And we're also hoping to have in the spring a neighbor meet and greet out in Caddy Valley, which we're just starting to plan right now. So I'm losing my voice for some reason. I'm not used to presenting in person anymore, but I'm going to get better at it. I'm going to turn it over to Lena to do the rest of the presentation.
All right. Hello again. Lena Ian, Community Impact and Policy Specialist. So picking up where Nick left off, I'd like to share a high-level overview of our community engagement work so far. So we kicked things off in 2020 when we began working with Scansion, one of our community engagement advisors, and our focus was on better understanding the needs and experiences of the diverse communities throughout our jurisdiction. So we did this by focusing on questions like, how do we engage diverse communities? What does robust engagement mean to us and to the community? And what are the most important values and how will we reflect those through this work? In 2021, we were able to start initiating conversations and early relationship building efforts with local tribes, local community leaders and staff, and community-based organizations. And in the spring, the Discover Coyote Valley webinar series was the first major opportunity to share what we've been working on with the public. And then the focus in 2022 was really on building out the full consultant team, like Nick had been talking about earlier, and laying the groundwork for what public engagement will look like throughout the project. Over the summer, the team completed the final draft of the outreach and engagement plan, which is intended to provide all project team members with an understanding of the engagement process, goals, and measures of success. And so in the following slides, we'll go into some more detail for each phase. So here we have a wonderful graphic that our communications team just recently put together that synthesizes the overall timeline for the master plan. And so the project is divided into 9 major phases of planning work, encompassing project startup, studying existing conditions, designing and writing the plan, and environmental review and permitting. And so the team estimates the process will conclude in early 2027. We'd like to note, though, that the team continues to investigate opportunities for implementing pilot projects in the near term, and that stewardship of the properties and creating opportunities for the public to visit and engage the landscape is ongoing and will continue throughout the planning process. And so we'd now like to walk through our engagement goals and activities for each major phase. So for phase 1 was really focused on development and refinement of the draft outreach and engagement plan, and starting to identify the tools and support that will be needed throughout the process. So as a part of this, we engaged in a series of preliminary activities that helped us build a deeper understanding of some of the challenges, needs, and aspirations of communities and neighborhoods within our jurisdiction. And we started with a series of neighborhood immersion tours, and thank you again to the members here tonight who joined for those. Really informative opportunity, and one of the first opportunities to get outside and during or in the midst of COVID. Next, we hosted 16 community contact interviews with individuals who broadly represented a range of geographic, professional, and other types of community associations, and also began hosting listening sessions with representatives from community-based organizations to learn more about their work and the communities they serve. So far, we have met with Health Trust, Vegilution, Asians American for Community Involvement, or AKI, Com University, Latinos United for a New America, or LUNA, Amigos de Guadalupe, and La Mesa Verde. The information gathered through these sessions will help guide the project team's future planning and engagement, and we're in the process of distilling key takeaways, but just a few of the lessons that we've heard multiple times and are really taking to heart and carrying forward through the process are that people want to be engaged early and often and have the opportunity and the choice of whether or not they are participating at certain phases. That we should prioritize transparency and clarity up front, as Nick had talked about earlier, as that will be a really crucial part of building trust over time. And that we must value the time that people are able to give, knowing that there will be varying levels of capacity and interest, and really maximizing those opportunities and showing respect to everyone's time. So moving into phase 2, in addition to conducting listening sessions, we've started to plan for a series of up to 6 JEDIA-focused small group workshops conducted in partnership with community-based organizations. And so we're hoping to use creative ways to engage CBOs where often ability to participate is limited by budget and staff capacity. And so we're continuing to look at different ways to do that as a part of our commitment to equity and access. And this phase will also include other opportunities to share and connect with the public, like a community questionnaire and a public event we're planning at Spreckles Hill on Earth Day, as again, Nick had mentioned earlier. So for phases 3 through 6, the goal is really to share and gather input on concepts for restoration and use of the conserved lands. So activities during these 3 major rounds of engagement will include in-person and digital opportunities, and they'll be in the form of general public workshops, JEDIA-focused small group workshops, and community questionnaires. And so looking at the diagram there at the bottom, the first part, Imagine, will be in fall 2023, and that'll be focused on developing the vision and objectives, followed by designing and analyzing scenarios in summer 2024, and refinement of and narrowing in on the preferred design option and early implementation priorities in winter 2025. And then moving to phase 7, engagement activities for phases 7 through 9 will be planned down the road, and as we learn more based on lessons from previous engagement phases. But phase 7 will involve sharing and gathering input on the draft master plan document and environmental review documents, and then followed by final drafts being shared for feedback in phase 8. And then phase 9, implement. So we'll have the opportunity in phase 9 here to celebrate the completion of the plan and groundbreaking on the first round of implementation projects. So we're really excited to be sharing these updates with you all tonight and to share some of our ideas on how the CAC can engage in community engagement moving forward. First, the door is always open to share insights with the project team based on your experience or expertise. This could be during informational presentations like these or during any other interactions with staff. We really appreciate it. We also hope you will continue to help us spread the word about Coyote Valley, the master planning process, and events and engagement opportunities as they come up, whether that's just sharing through your own network, social media. Again, really appreciate it, and it makes a big impact on us being able to get the word out. And so I believe with that concludes the presentation, but happy to answer any questions. And I think Nick has some questions for us as well.
Thank you. I do want to recognize Aaron and Steve. I see your questions. I'll come to you shortly. First, Nick, you did a great job. Your presentation skills are fine. You probably just needed a class.
Yeah, I think so.
One thing, and I hope this doesn't seem critical, but there was a note that you had 615 subscribers to your Coyote Valley listserv, which seems noteworthy low for an email list. So I'm wondering how that works. Are you able to are you able to leverage like the common email lists of the authority? Are there rules that define that when you do a new list, you have to start it from scratch? It seems like that number should be pretty easy to scale. And then from there, we'll go to Aaron and then Steve.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that list number will grow as we start to do more engagement activities. We've been kind of in a quiet period, so I expect that we'll start to see a lot more subscribers as we're out in the public more. But I do work closely with our communications officer, and we can use the other communication channels to get Coyote Valley messages out. We did want to have a specific list just for those who are particularly interested in Coyote Valley, but we're not confined to just using that list. And Mark, anything to add there?
So yeah, to your point, Mr. Chair, there are rules that we have, not legal rules, but internal rules that we don't automatically put all of those who receive our newsletter onto this list, because we have, good trust built up with our followers that they don't want to start getting a bunch of new information. However, we do put in our newsletter the link to sign up for that list, and we, are going to do that more, especially as activities start up that are engaging.
Thank you. I got Aaron, go ahead, and then I got Steve and then Lonnie.
Thanks, Lauren. Good presentation, Lauren. Thank you so much. In terms of your presentation, CV camp and all that type of stuff going forward, what do you have in terms of the sticky points of what you're trying to go ahead and bring about? And that's, I'm trying to go ahead and identify people that are resistant to the down zoning and devaluations of family properties. You can go ahead and, I guess an example of that would be the Lester property, which had Speed Farms before, and you've got other things that are kind of as kind of roadblocks in terms of you guys are kind of at different odds in terms of what you're trying to achieve. So in the reach out program, how do you, what's your proposition or how do you plan to go ahead and reach out to those folks?
Yeah, great. Through the chair, great question. You know, that's a tough question to answer, but I would start by saying that the real focus of the master planning process isn't the private properties. And so we're really focused on the lands that are already protected and what to do with those. That said, the planning work we do has to be in the larger context of the private lands and the larger vision for Coyote Valley. But a lot of the conversations about what will happen with the private lands, land use will take place at the city level or at the county level, where those regulations are really affecting what they can and cannot do there. The city of San Jose is starting a separate study. It's particularly focused on the east side of Monterey Road and those properties, which currently have land use designations that weren't changed when the city redid its zoning general plan amendments about a year ago. We're closely coordinating with the city of San Jose staff that are working on that, making sure that as they develop new land use regulations, that they're taking into account the conservation vision of the protected lands. But really the focus of the master planning process are lands that are already protected and what we want to do on those lands.
Thank you. Steve, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation and the update. That's great. I'm thrilled by the progress the OSA has made in acquiring lands in the Coyote Valley. I have a desire of mine, and then my question is, how might a community member work through this process to contribute to it? It piqued my interest to see the trail routing as a topic and the imagine process that's coming up. I imagine a trail coming all the way, say, from Tilton Ranch or Tilton Avenue, Morgan Hill, on the west side of the valley, and going from one end of the valley to the other. A trail, the worst place, personal opinion, the worst place possible would be to put a trail along Santa Teresa and Hale. So if there was one on the edge of the valley, how might a community member voice that opinion to you guys, contribute to it, harangue you at the right time to in front of mine and help through the process through to see something happen in 2027?
If I can first say, definitely join the email list.
Yes, and tell your friends.
On the it's a start.
We'll let Nick answer, but I reckon we'll see. Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Steve. I think in the spring, it's going to get a lot more fun because we're going to have a lot more opportunities to provide that feedback. So if you're any member of the public, we'll have a community questionnaire that we release in the spring that is focused on people's hopes and aspirations and desires for Coyote Valley. We're kind of entering the phase where we want to dream big and ask everyone to provide that feedback. So the Earth Day event will be an opportunity to do that in person, but we'll also have an online questionnaire we'll be developing and distributing at the same time. The county is updating its regional trail network right now, and I know they're planning on some engagement activities. We're also coordinating with them. The county parks is another partner of the project, even though they're not a landowner of one of the conserved properties on the valley floor. But that's another opportunity to get involved when, particularly the thing you were interested in with the regional trail connection. You're going to see a map from them that is very high level, showing like very basic routes from how to get from point A to point B. So you might see it like along Hale and Santa Teresa in the big map that they have, but the specifics and whether those connections might take place on the conserved properties is really up to this process. And I should say that when it comes to deciding trail routing, there's going to be a lot of considerations that go into that, from habitat, where habitat is, where the water is going to go is a big question. And so where there's more than one viable alternative to make a connection, that's when we're going to have the public, hey, tell us which of these is better. But it might be that there's pretty constrained options to make certain connections that we'll discover as we go through the site analysis phase.
And one thing to add or ask from that would be this. I would think this committee would be solicited directly for opportunities to volunteer and contribute, just like we were in the past for the CV camp stuff and stuff like that, right?
That's correct.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask
a question around the community engagement. So has there been any thought around involving the community groups from within like large tech companies? I saw a lot of community groups that regular people get to participate in, but as someone who's a part of the tech world, you literally go from home to work and you live in your tech campus and then you drive home. And if you have a family, you might be lucky to kind of participate in community events, but a lot of your community comes from the community building around within the HR groups and in your ERGs, whatever else they're called. So is there any thought around building out those kinds of community groups or engagements?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And like that's a really good example of something that if you do have any personal connections or points of contact that you'd be willing to help connect staff with, like that would be really useful. I think that, I mean, that the group that you're talking about is definitely, you know, on our larger radar, one of, you know, it's on the radar, but yeah, so I guess great point, great idea, and would definitely be interested in exploring that more.
I would definitely say, yes, please do this. They're very lazy. They will not, there's people, they won't look for things, but they have asked. I've been at several companies where they're like, we want to engage the community that we're in because this isn't necessarily our first hub, right? This is our second, third, fourth, you know, location. How do we engage the new workforce that we now have, you know, kind of scooped up or bought out, right? And make them happy or teach them about this new world that they're a part of and make them know that we care. And there's not always someone to guide them. So I feel like it's good to just almost like say, hi, we're here and we want to help show your workforce that there's a lot of other things outside of your four walls. So
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you. And Kathy.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having this in 3 languages, Spanish, Vietnamese, and English. But I'm wondering if you had the ability to focus on certain Vietnamese groups to do outreach there. And if not, if you'd like some suggestions, I can get some to you.
Great.
And kind of make that nice farm handoff.
Yes, and I appreciate you mentioning that. We are hoping to connect with the Vietnamese American Service Center as one of the organizations. But again, if you have other recommendations, would love connections. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Anything else, Nick?
Yeah, through the chair, if I may, I did want to offer and ask if any of you would be interested in a tour of Coyote Valley, getting out into the properties, talking with me and Lena and others on the team. We'd be happy to organize that in small groups, maybe a show of hands. Looks like everyone. So yeah, we will be in touch and we'll try to get something set up in the spring. It's nice and green out there. It's a really awesome opportunity just to talk and get to know each other better and get to know the landscape better too. So yeah, we'll do that.
Thank you, Nick. I have never turned one of those down. Not yet. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I think we then move to another informational item. I believe all of the upcoming items are easily found online and included in the full version of our packet. So thank you, Caroline, for presenting them to us. The first of these is the Board of Director appointments. And as with all agendized items, the public will have the opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes. I see none here. And none of the public in the virtual public. So Caroline, please go right.
Thank you. Like, as you mentioned, I have a couple of informational items for the committee. The first one being just an update on our board director appointments. As Mark mentioned, last year we had a redistricting period, and which also coincided with the 2022 election. So we did have 4 directors who had expiring terms. It was District 2, Mike Flauher, District 5, Vicki Alexander, District 6, Mike Potter, and District 7, Calvin Gill. So all 4 of those directors pulled papers. This is a euphemism for filing their candidacy with the County of Santa Clara. And they all ran essentially unopposed. So the 4 of them filed their nomination documents, qualified and ran unopposed. And so in that instance, the County of Santa Clara does an appointment rather than putting their names on the ballot. So the Board of Supervisors moved forward with the appointments of Director Flauher, Director Alexander, Director Potter, and Director Gill on October 18th. And they're now in their new term, their new 4-year term, which will expire in 2026. And then Kelly swore them in on December, on the first meeting of December in 2022.
Thank you very much. The next informational item is the CAC meeting dates. Now I know she sent those out. Is it safe to calling for public comment? You have 3 minutes. Any? Okay, Caroline.
Thank you. So this item. As you mentioned, is just to touch on the meeting dates for 2023 for the CAC. In your packet was included the document that has all the standing meetings for the board and the CAC. And then in addition to that, you were sent a draft document, a working document in essence, just to give you an idea of the meetings and special meetings and events that are coming up during the year. So that includes some special meetings for the board of directors, special meetings for CAC, and then some special events pertaining to the 30th anniversary. There's a couple of meetings that I wanted to bring to your attention because they are coming up. So for in February 23rd, we have scheduled a use management committee on its regular cadence. It follows precedes the second board meeting of the month in each quarter. And in this particular meeting, we were hoping to do a joint meeting with our Use and Management Committee members and the CAC for a field visit to the Mayano Yakima Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve. And you would get an update on the progress being made with the capital improvements or capital planning project going on there. So that's the one. And pardon me, I too need a little bit of water. And then the second one is a joint meeting of the board and the CAC on Thursday, March 9th at 6:30. Maybe subject to change, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, to bring the two bodies together for an informational session to facilitate communication and information sharing. And some of you may recall here, correct, in person here. Some of you may recall that we had a similar meeting in 2021. So we wanted to recreate that type of meeting to share some information with both bodies and to give you guys a chance to communicate and share information. And then one more, it is one of your regular committee meeting dates, May 22nd, 2023. This is the meeting where we will be reviewing the capital planning grants for the urban grant program. So it's a big meeting. We will likely start at 5:30 to accommodate just the content and perhaps the public comments that we're likely to have for that particular topic. So just wanted to bring those to the forefront. Any questions?
Edward.
I'm just curious, how is 7 p.m. set for this meeting? And is it possible to Is there a process for changing it or polling people to find out if it can be earlier?
It's in our bylaws, so the Citizens Advisory Committee handbook guidelines and responsibilities. It dictates that the meeting will be on the fourth Monday of every other month at 7 o'clock.
It's in the bylaws. I
Mhm.
didn't realize that. Thank you. Okay, any other comments? I think there is one more item for of new business, which is the Citizens Advisory Committee term expirations, again by Caroline. Thank you. And again, members of the public have this opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes. Seeing none.
Okay, so every year at the January meeting, staff inform the committee members of which members have upcoming expiring terms. As you're aware, our committee terms are 2 years. They began July 1st and then June 30th. With a 2-year span. And so this year, I just wanted to make the committee aware. We have several positions that are expiring on June 30th, 2023. We'll start with the district representatives. So District 5, Lauren Lewis, District 6, Raymond Mueller, District 7, Raj Banat. And then from our at-large representatives, we have Steve Mink, Kathy Sutherland, Merritt Burton, and Ed Von Rennen. And some of these terms are when we have new committee members appointed, sometimes you're assuming a term midway through. So which is why, for example, Ed, he's a new member on the committee, however, the term is expiring this year. So we do have a process. The committee members, if they would like to be reappointed, we'll let staff know. I generally send out a reminder in April, 90 days before the expiration, to let you know. And then it's simply a matter of responding in writing whether or not you would like to be reappointed. And then we can take those appointments to the board for final approval.
Thank you so much. Any questions about that? Okay, now we progress to our informational reports, the first of which comes from the board liaison. All right, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. I guess this is the second in-person meeting, which is great. And so some of you haven't met me. So Helen Chapman, and I was going to segue into saying we had our organizational meeting about almost 2 weeks ago, and I'm very proud to say that I was elected chair of the board. So I can say I am now the chair.
Congratulations.
And Vicki Alexander, our newer board member, was elected vice chair. So we have 2 women leading the board right now. So we're very excited. So that's just a little bit about what took place on this coming Thursday, our board meeting. We're going to go through our committee assignments, and it's very likely that you will not see me again. That will be presenting, another person will be taking on that role. Not that I don't love you all, but there's a lot going on this year. 30th anniversary. There's a lot of past him. So I look forward to actually, attending a lot of events with you and getting involved in the community and see if we can do more community building and getting things going. Personally, I wanted to share just because I saw it got the same little small spreadsheet that Mark sent out that showed all the districts and see who, who's my representatives, because we all got redistricted. We have new congressional representatives, new legislative representatives. So I personally am going to take it upon myself to kind of meet with people that are in my area and say, hey, this is what's going on with us. Share a little bit about what we're doing and get feedback from them so we can start really develop those relationships on a local level. I do it at City Hall, but I think we need to take it a step further, work with our assembly members, our congressional members. Some are brand new, may not know us, and get them out there and observing what's going on. And through the chair, I do want to answer a question that was raised by a board member, because in addition to role as chair, I also serve as alternate to LAFCO. So I can answer that question for you on LAFCO. So the mission of LAFCO is to preserve agricultural land and open space, curb urban sprawl, encourage efficient delivery of services, explore and facilitate regional opportunities for fiscal sustainability, and promote public accountability and transparency. And LAFCO is also going through a reorg as well, because several members of LAFCO have either termed out or were not reelected, so there's new appointments taking place. That meeting will be on February 1st, which if you're interested, you might, members of the public can attend just to get an idea of what's going on. Sometimes the meetings are kind of dull because if there's no annexations, there's not a lot of work. But it's good to kind of, might want to meet the new members that are coming on. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, Justin.
I do have a question, since you are a member of LAFCO. What is the latest and greatest with the southeast quadrant in Oregon? If there is anything.
No recent. The only, and I'll get technical because this will also lead to Mark's presentation earlier when we talked about the housing element. There is a couple of lands there, I think with Gilroy and Morgan Hill, that have been sitting on LAFCO's agenda for now for a little over a year. We had one presentation on it, and no action was taken by LAFCO at that point, which that is the subject of the debate with the housing element, because the county is saying, hey, we could do something over here, but without getting wonky into housing element policy, in order for it to count the county, it has to be implementable, which means you have to have a project that's shovel ready. And so for those two properties to count as developable land to count in RENA goals, they'd have to be approved by LAFCO, which is an additional step. So chances are those are not probably going to get counted. The county would get pushback, just like the city is also has gotten its letter from the state, and we're finding that not everything that we put in there is implementable yet. So we have to go back and make sure it is. Things are fairly quiet. And so if we work out the deal with the county and the city, then those two properties may not get counted as part of the housing element. And there might be other places to look. Because again, LAFCO's alternative is to not do those annexations because that's primary agricultural land. Okay. Thank you for letting me get wonky. All right, any other questions? All right, congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair.
Congratulations, Chair. Next item is the general manager or staff report. Lee and Mark are fighting over it now.
It's not turning green.
All right,
Thank you,
Yes.
Mark.
good evening, once again, members of the CAC. So I just wanted to connect a couple of things together that I heard earlier. And so I really appreciate the comments that people have made regarding suggestions for groups with whom we could engage in the community, general, ideas that are really tantalizing, specific suggestions about groups we can connect with. And wanted to expand on that. So in addition to in service of the master planning, we definitely want to continue to hear ideas from all of you for that. But also we are in our 30th anniversary year. Charlotte presented on that back in November. And for that too, we'd be very interested in any events that you think we could potentially participate in for outreach. Any individuals that you know of that may be organizing events or somehow connected with their community we could reach out to. And anything like that you could bring to our attention will be really helpful. We depend on your connections out in the community to inform our work and really benefit, and our public benefits from that because we get to more people that way. So if you have any thoughts that way, please do bring them to, you can bring them to my attention. If they're volunteer opportunities, I'll pass those along to Gavin, or if there are communications opportunities to Charlotte, but you can send those to me. And then for any of you who have been helping to push out our messaging on social media, appreciate that too. Please keep doing that. We'll also be sending emails periodically throughout the year regarding opportunities to push out messages regarding 30th anniversary and some of the events that we'll be holding. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, keep the ideas coming.
Thank you for that. And just on top of that, just want to remind the committee that that's a great way for them to kind of, you know, exercise influence in kind of getting the community priorities ranked as they see them in their communities. Mark and the various internal partners we have here have been great to work with on stuff like that. And if there is nothing further,
Actually, Mr. Chair, if I could.
please.
Thank you very much. Good evening, committee members. I'm Lee Rauscher, Assistant General Manager. One quick comment this evening, and that is one really important date that on the calendar that Caroline sent you last Friday, and that is to remind you, you have an invitation to join us Thursday evening at 5:45 to 6:15 to celebrate along with the board the service of Kelly Guerra. Tonight will be her last evening with the CAC. Her retirement date is February the 3rd. So we're just going to celebrate every day with her between now and then. And again, the reception is before the board meeting, so 5:45 to 6:15, and then we'll be presenting a resolution in honor of Kelly's service during the meeting. And you're more than welcome to stay, of course, and or contribute to that during the board meeting. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was on your radar.
Thank you so much. So people do still retire. Okay. Yeah, good to know. I haven't heard one of those in a while. So time now for committee member reports. I will get things started by saying that if you're looking for opportunities to get outside or for a workout, I'm sure your various park agencies are taking volunteers for trail work days. Among them is one with which I'm affiliated, the Quicksilver Running Club. We've adopted the New Elmenden Trail in Quicksilver, and we have 4 dates between now and May that are on my phone, but not in front of me. So if you're looking for opportunities like that, reach out to your local agencies or me if you're living near Quicksilver. Any other committee member reports? Okay, then from there we go to subcommittee reports. I do not believe we have any standing subcommittees. Okay, we do not. Then with that, at 8:46 p.m. on this fine Monday, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all so much. Until next time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.